Here's my setup for testing various opto boards. This one is a 10 opto board. It has 7 optos that come out these headers and 3 separate ones over here. Fortunately and unfortunately, Williams labeled those pinned those optos different so you couldn't confuse them, but it caused me to make this kind of connector so it's universal. I've got it hooked up to an opto pair that I snatched out of a game, and we are in switch test right now. And you won't hear anything because I don't have a soundboard connected, but you can see on the display that opto is toggling as I run my finger through the beam. I can switch all those to the next opto position and test those, and I will do that, but I can't do it one-handed. On this board, what typically fails is the electrolytic capacitor on the right side, and you can see I've reinstalled one. And I like to bend the legs like that so you can see what's underneath the cap with a quick visual inspection. What typically goes wrong with this board and all the other opto boards and some other Williams boards is that 100 microfarad cap leaks and then severs the power trace underneath it. This opto board goes with this Congo MPU, which I will be testing shortly also. That opto board checked out 100%, and so let's check out the rest of the CPU. The client indicated that the game was playing fine, and then it just up and quit, and this is the most likely reason. This alkaline corrosion, it had leaked from the batteries, alkaline batteries, not acid batteries, had damaged all these traces, and this 74 LS14. I had to put one jumper on the back of the board. Typical procedure: remove all the parts that are affected, sand down to bare copper, conformal coat, reinstall. I also installed NVRAM, replaced the power input header, and that's it for this one, I think, as I recall. Of course, I socket everything when I replace something. So we've got to check F114 and 115 message. That's normal because I'm not in a Congo, and it's indicating these kind of errors. I don't have a soundboard connected either, so let's go into test. Let's test the switches. You can see Congo doesn't use the rightmost switch column, but we can make sure that everything else is working correctly there. So there we go. Here's the coin door switches. All right. And the next test is solenoid test. And I'm just going to make sure that the MPU board is sending the signals over through the ribbon cable to the solenoid driver board. And it's clearly doing that. Each of the solenoid banks has its own enable that goes to these 74 LS 374s on the board, and there's a 240 over here for the lamp matrix. So we can also test, sorry about that, general illumination. Now remember, WPC95 only has 3 GI circuits that it controls the dimness of, and that's why you only see 3 dim for that test. We're going to test lamps and flashers at the same time. Super nice. By the way, this WPC95 board also, in addition to driving a WPC89 driver board, is driving a WPC89 dot matrix controller, and it does it just fine. That's something I discovered reading about the internet. So this MPU board is good to go. Now I get to go do the fun part and test the driver board and the AV board in my Attack from Mars. And the repaired power driver board that's going into a Congo, it's in my Attack from Mars now. But it had the 6A2 diodes still in place. I took those out, and since the board was nice and clean, I replaced those with 0 ohm jumpers, as Williams did later in the run. You can see I replaced these GI headers, both output and input. Can't see it very well back there, but the 5-volt header was replaced, as well as all these AC power in headers. And on the AV board, the 4 blue caps that you can see were replaced. Those are in the audio circuits. Those are 1 microfarad 100 volt caps. They're 63 volt from the factory, but 100 is easier to find around here these days. Also replaced those 2 big 10K capacitors. Those are power filter caps. And I replaced the high voltage output header. It was burned, even though the client is using a color DMD, as most of us are these days. I replaced it. Put some labels on the ROMs. Of course, those are my ROMs, but the client's Congo ROMs, which I put somewhere here, now have labels in it. So we can test in my Attack from Mars. Pull this button out, make sure we get coils. Whoops. The diverter hold, you can never see anything there. If you got in there and held that diverter, you'd be able to see something, but not as it is now. And there are 11 flashers, as I recall. 3, 4, 5, 11 flashers, and then it starts over on Attack from Mars. Those are all working. I got crazy flipper fingers here. I need to play. GI. Rather boring on Attack from Mars and WPC 95s, but you can see it's commanding the dimming of each of those. All lamp tests. Let's take some light off the subject. And this driver board is driving all the lamps perfectly. And that is it. I'm going to play some Attack from Mars, but this board pair is working properly. I guess I missed sound test. I can do that. That's enough of that. I will test the sound with the Congo ROMs reinstalled, but I thank you so much for sending this 4-board set. You're going to be good to go. This is Congo. Being driven by Attack from Mars, so some of the sounds won't be present.